the backs of the work of a range of project teams and partners who are working on finding solutions to some of the most challenging agri-environment priorities in the country. I must illustrate, we didn't start from an easy point. A lot of the reason that these projects were funded is that they were agri-environment challenges that were unsurmountable at a national level, and solutions needed to be found. So if we wanted to start with easy priorities, we weren't going to start with these ones. But in my opinion, if we can do the difficult ones first, the rest of the country will be quite easy. Next slide, please. And this slide just illustrates really what we've done in Ireland. We've had the LIFE projects, we've had the BURN programme, we have a results-based agri-environment pilot project funded by the European Commission. They've all played a major part in the development of the Irish approach, and this is now being further developed through a number of European Innovation Partnership operational groups. This slide just shows the distribution of our 23 operational groups that are funded under the Rural Development Programme, dealing with an awful lot more wider issues than just agri-environment. But the ones I've highlighted here in blue, which is a significant proportion of them, are ones that are looking at innovations in results-based pilot schemes. Next slide, please. On this slide, I want to illustrate that in terms of our overall structure of our agri-environment climate measure in our current Rural Development Programme, that the main approach is still action-based through our green, low-carbon agri-environment scheme, GLAS. This is a menu-type system with priority access to the farms with priority environmental access, a tiered approach. And then our RBAP's component, if you can just click on there, Wolfgang. Our RBAP's component is comprised of our BURN programme and a number of European innovation partnerships. So our national GLAS action-based programme has a budget over the programming period of approximately 1.4 billion, whereas the RBAP's has a budget of approximately 50 to 60 million. The 70 million is for all the EIP operational groups and the BURN programme. Next slide, please. First of all, just in terms of the island of Ireland, it is dominated by pasture-based agricultural systems, and we have a diverse range of land types in terms of intensity and overall land use. So this is a map of the range of nature values of agricultural land, with H&V farmland highlighted in the green and dark green. These areas have natural constraints on food production, but they're hugely important in terms of biodiversity, carbon storage and sequestration, and also water quality. And then as we move towards the southeast of the country, we move into parts of the country that have less natural constraints on food production. They're dominated by intensive pasture and arable systems. And we believe that the results-based payment schemes are a central component in the design of our overall agricultural system, and an agricultural system that will target incentives and design them to match the capacity of the land to reward farmers both through public money and through the market to produce a range of ecosystem services, both food and fibre, pollination services, carbon sequestration, water regulation, etc. The next slide, please. So in Ireland to date, we have focused our results-based payment projects on biodiversity targets and associated ecosystem services. So it's basically biodiversity and the co-benefits for other services. Examples of the services we target include habitat quality for a range of species, water, soil, carbon, and pollination are being increasingly trialled as targets within our European Innovation Partnership operational groups. Next slide, please. At this stage, as a first step, I want to recap on the results-based payment guidelines on good results indicators. Now, this has been developed in various handbooks at EU Commission level and also through various research projects and reviews of results-based payment schemes in the past. So the characteristics of good results indicators that we take into account are that they need to reflect the variation in the condition of the target and occur consistently across the target area. They need to respond to agricultural management and in particular be in the control of the farmer. They need to be easily understood by farmers, advisors, and also the paying agency, particularly after some minimal training. And then as in Ireland, where you're using a multi-criteria analysis and a number of results indicators combined in the one scoring system, the optimum combination and weighting of results indicators should reflect the relative importance to the target, minimize complexity, and provide robust measures of quality. And also, we think it's important that the indicators themselves, there are some there that provide early warning systems and clear signals to the farmer on the success of their current management. Next slide, please. So taking these characteristics into account, the foundation of our results-based payment projects are various field scoring systems. These can be 10 or 5-point systems using an optimum combination of results indicators. We have two broad categories of indicators generally used across our projects. The first ones are ecological quality, which is generally a set of positive and negative indicators combined with other indicators such as vegetation structure, particularly for indicators or for targets where the vegetation structure is important to the target, for example, bird and invertebrate species, for example. These are then combined with a second set of indicators that measure hydrological or soil condition and a range of other damaging maybe activities within the parcel as an early warning system to the farmer that some of these issues need to be addressed sooner rather than later. One thing to note is not all systems include these range of indicators, and in each local area, depending on your target and your geographical setting, the project basically decides on what results indicators are most appropriate for their particular target. But at this stage, we have a range of scorecards developed or under development for grasslands, heathlands, peatlands, scrub woodland, and field boundaries. Next slide, please. This is just an example of the hen harrier EIP scorecard. This highlights that it's possible to incorporate a wider range of ecosystem services into the one scorecard through the optimum combination and weighting of various results indicators. So in this example, we have a number of results indicators that measure the ecological integrity, soil integrity, and hydrological integrity, measured by things such as plant species indicators, amount of bare soil, and basically damage to natural drainage features. Generally, these three combined make up about 80% of the available points in this scoring card. And generally, they're measured, as you can see in the slide there, across approximately 3 to 5 levels. So for each result indicator, to decide whether the state of it on the particular assessed parcel is poor, moderate, or good. And much of the weighting goes towards ecological integrity, 50%, and then the other 30% here is approximately for soil integrity and hydrological integrity. Next slide, please. And this is the results indicators that basically, this is another 20% of the available points are related to essentially negative indicators. We feel that these are important to note that these indicators have negative weightings and you can lose a lot of points if scoring badly on these indicators. So for example, you can see here for many of these indicators under damaging activities, the top marks are 0. But if you have any of these damaging activities on the parcel, you can lose 40, 20 or 30 or 40 points quite rapidly. So this is a good communication tool. It focuses the mind on improving management and can be rectified relatively easy with appropriate support. And this improves the link between farmers' management and the overall scoring or payment system on a particular land parcel. So that's just an example of our scoring system. Some are less complicated, but this is one of the most complicated because it's incorporating a wide range of biodiversity targets and ecosystem services, with the hen harrier as an overall flagship species in these areas. Next slide, please. So the key messages on selection of our field level results indicators and overall design of these field level scorecards is that they must be simple and not too simple. Basically, they have to be understandable by the farmer, but above all, every single indicator must be evidence-based. You use the evidence base also to inform the weighting and the combination of these results indicators in the scoring card. Now, in many European countries and in Ireland as well, we were wondering where to start. There's a lot of existing information out there. For example, in many of our scorecards, we started with indicator species list for monitoring Natura 2000 areas for the particular biodiversity target. That's why we start with biodiversity. There's a lot of information, monitoring information out there because of the Natura 2000 monitoring requirements. But what you must do in this is reduce the complexity. For example, do the species indicators, we just basically cut them down to the bare minimum, and particularly ones that are understandable by the farmer. Then sometimes we don't even use species indicators in some of the programs for some of the targets. So a key question is, do the species indicators need to be complemented by ecosystem structure variables? So can you just look at proportion of wet features, overall vegetation structure, particularly if the species communities in an area are relatively stable? And can it be simpler just to include ecosystem structure variables to replace the species indicators? Then we look at the weighting of indicators and link to the payment structure, which is also important. Also, we think it's very important to be aware of other legislative requirements and, where possible, take these into account in the scoring system, so that when a farmer or an advisor is scoring a particular field, they know if it scores highly in this scoring system, they will have absolutely no problem with cross-compliance or other legislative requirements of the Common Agricultural Policy. So it is very clear that the scorecard should give clear messages and signals to the farmers and their advisors. It should have a coherent approach across the legislative framework. Just on the little graph we have here on the bottom right-hand side, it shows the scoring system in the pearl mussel project. You can see here on the first 3 points, you don't get any additional payment for the agri-environment measure. That's because the first 3 points really highlight that if you're at point 3, you're really covering all the basic legislative requirements and cross compliance. But there's a real incentive there. Once you get to a score of 4, there's a big jump in payments. Then the payments incrementally increase slightly until a score of 7. And then we really want to incentivize the farmers to go to good and excellent management. So there is a significant jump there at a score of 8. So really the way you match your payment system to your scorecards is very important in terms of how you influence farmer behavior. Next slide, please. So one thing that's important as well, our scorecards concentrate on the field or parcel level, but as many of you will know, we often need a whole farm or landscape level approach to deliver particular environmental targets, particularly in the water quality side. And this is where the pearl mussel project, whose target is a freshwater species living in the river environment, but is seriously impacted by sediment and nutrient levels and flow levels coming off the surrounding catchment. So here they have the scorecards as well for the various habitats. So the habitat quality is assessed across peatlands, grasslands, and woodlands. And these are combined with an overall farm assessment, which includes results indicators on farmyard risk of nutrient loss, risk of nutrient and sediment loss from fields, and also flow regulation within the field. So have you got recently drained areas or clear drains, or are the drainage systems fully naturalized or essentially semi-naturalized in terms of the hydrological system? Next slide. I just want to illustrate this on an actual illustration of a farm. So this diagram is compliments of illustrators that work with the pearl mussel project. The top part of the slide there shows the farm before it went into the pearl mussel project. So you can see here initially that all fields could be scored, and even on this farm at the start of the project there are some excellent quality intact peatlands scoring 10 out of 10, some excellent quality species rich grasslands, and some medium quality. So even without doing very much more, you could say on individual parcels this farmer could receive quite substantial reward for these good to excellent parcels. But the main target is with a water species, the freshwater pearl mussel, and here we've got significant problems for the freshwater pearl mussel. There's silt from poaching ground reaching the river from point A. There's open drains leading directly to the river from point B. And there's patches of heavy grazing on one of the peatland areas of the farm, number C. And then there's also issues with some non-native invasive species such as rhododendron that are affecting the overall ecological and hydrological integrity of the peatland system itself. So when the overall farm assessment is done, this farmer gets a score of about 0.3 for their overall farm assessment. So all their results-based payments are multiplied by 0.3. So they're losing a significant amount of money or missing out on a significant amount of money because of the condition of these 5 problem areas. So what happens then is the farmer says, oh my God, how am I going to actually sort these out? I want to improve the situation. And often they didn't realize the situation was this bad for the river itself. So the project team then supports the farmer with supporting actions. So here there's plugs put in the drainage systems, cutting the connectivity between the field drains and the river systems on point A in the bottom picture. There's cattle drinking troughs and systems put into so that the cattle don't have direct access to the water. There's fencing off riparian zones for creating riparian margins. And then the whole system is scored again. And because of these works, the field scores have improved. The actual, on this bottom picture, the farmer will be getting a farm assessment score of 1.2. It's an excellent quality. So they're getting a 20% bonus. So this shows you how we can combine supporting actions and clear signals from both the field assessment and the whole farm assessment in an overall system, and communicate it fairly straightforwardly to the farmer in this illustration. Next slide, please. Now, in the hen harrier project, it's a slightly different example. Here we want to put a value on a specific target endangered species. Now with this, we target biodiversity and a range of ecosystem services, but we also have one of the most endangered species, the hen harrier. Only 150 breeding pairs left in the country at the moment. So a lot of these areas are also designated as part of the Natura 2000 areas under the Birds Directive. So there's already significant investment in intensive monitoring justified on the basis of the extinction threat to this species. However, if we just pay the farmer on the numbers of this species alone, there's considerable natural variation due to annual weather conditions and in the breeding success. So these are influenced by factors outside the farmer's control. So still, the majority of the payment is based on factors within the farmer control, for example, habitat quality of their fields and parcels. But the project here wanted to put a direct value on the species itself. So they've come up with a bonus payment. Now, it only takes about approximately 10% of all payments to the farmers, but it's hugely important in terms of tying farmers' behavior, and they're changing their overall impressions of the bird. So now they see the bird on their land as one of their natural assets that can contribute to their overall farm business. So in terms of the bonus payment, at the SPA level or the regional level, there's targets set for each area based on number of nests or pairs. Any farmer within that area, if they have a field score greater than 6, has a share of that bonus if the overall landscape reaches their targets in terms of number and pairs. And also farmers who have breeding success within 1 kilometre of their farm get a second share in the bonus. So these payments are also paid to farmers at a time of year, approximately, I think it's, Fergal might clarify this, I think it's in November or December, just before Christmas. So it's like a Christmas bonus for the farmer that's tied directly to the hen harrier species. So next slide, please. So in Ireland, we have 3 payment models that are emerging. At our simplest level, we just measure the habitat quality using scorecards on fields, combine this with supporting actions to help the farmer get the highest environmental quality on their farm. The second payment is where we've got where we need whole farm assessments for the particular target. We combine the habitat scores with a whole farm adjustment and have supporting actions as well. And then our final one is where we've got rare or endangered species that are highly variable on an annual basis. It might be unfair to tie the payments directly to them or too much of the payments. So here we have a bonus system devised that complements the habitat quality and supporting action payments. Next slide, please. So just in summary on this, in terms of results measurement, in all cases, they're measured by the advisor who's employed by a farmer at the moment. We have a substantial private and public farm advisory system in Ireland. We have training of advisors and farmers. So the annual farmer and advisor training, these are a mix of mandatory and voluntary sessions. And also within the EIPs currently, and also within the Burn programme, they have trialled farmer self-assessment. And it's looking like at the moment, it might be possible to reduce the need for advisor submission or scoring or certification to every 3 years, particularly once the baseline is established. But farmers still feel that they would prefer some advisor support, because farmers tend to be quite conservative. They don't want to risk any penalties or overscoring. So they generally tend to be conservative, and they underscore themselves in any trials that have been done by the various project teams themselves. Next slide, please. In terms of the results verification, there's a local project team. So when the advisors submit their scores, and for the farmers and advisors submit their scores to the local project team, there's 100% admin checks for anomalies by project officers. There's inspections of approximately 5 to 30% of farmers. This is higher in year one to ensure that there's a good baseline. And following on from that, then we can have a risk-based and random component to the selection of farms for inspection. Then the local project team submits the payments runs to the paying agency. The paying agency then selects 10% often of these for a full score report. Now, one of the things is with the EIPs, they have devised quite novel applications, mobile phone applications and GIS databases. So the project teams can actually generate these score reports almost instantaneously from the IT system. And then the also paying agency conducts a number of witness audits with the local project team. So there's a quite robust verification and measurement process in place at the moment. Next slide, please. One of the things that I want to emphasize at the moment is because of the range of pilot projects and the investment in pilot work in Europe and in Ireland in particular, we now have a wide range of resources developed to support the design and implementation of results-based payment. All these are available on the project website, and under the Irish flag on the results-based payment network, we have put up links to all these project resources. And with the help of the project teams, we're hoping to keep these updated on a regular basis. So just keep an eye on the network website to see updates on these. Just click on there. And this just want to illustrate that there's a number of project teams, particularly the Hen Harrier project and the Pearl Mussel project, which are substantial, the largest operational groups in Europe actually, have developed a substantial amount of time and resources in developing mobile phone applications. So these are now available. You can talk to the project teams on how these are developed. And this is very much simplified the system. Advisors and farmers can go into the field. We can have real live monitoring of the scoring system and generate reports almost instantaneously for the audit trail and verification of the system. Next slide, please. Now, a lot of my time is spent doing research work and assisting the pilots and testing these. So we have funded by our Department of Agriculture and in partnership with a range of research institutes and universities around the country. We have a number of research projects, and this is just one example, the Farm Ecos project, which looks at identifying novel measures for future agri-environmental climate measures. Here we're looking at how we can actually incentivize the production of a range of ecosystem services, pollination, pest control, carbon storage, habitat quality, and soil health. So we're actually measuring the production of these services on farms, testing the scorecards and see how the existing scoring systems align with the production of these ecosystem services. And then we're working with our rural economy specialists in our National Agriculture Agency, Teagasc, to look at cost-benefit analysis of this from an economic perspective. So just coming near the end now, the next slide. So the lessons learned, one thing I like to use in this is the analogy of a car. And overall, we think that a well-designed car is simple to drive. Now, it mightn't be simple to design. What we're trying to design here essentially is a Formula One car to assist the farmers who are the drivers to get from point A to B in terms of improvement of environmental performance of farms. So we see ourselves as a support system and support engineers in the pits, and we want to keep the farmers on the road to actually addressing our biodiversity and environmental challenges while actually securing viable incomes for themselves as well. So we've used strategic use of a range of funding instruments to develop, test and trial results-based payments, including LIFE programs, European innovation partnerships, national and EU research funding. We have a common design approach across diverse agricultural landscapes. Some of this has even been trialed in Spain and Portugal in permanent crops, and in the Montados, it's under development at the moment. One thing I want to emphasize, that time and expertise is required to develop the scoring system to account for variations in environmental conditions outside the farmer's control, ensure the indicators reflect achievement of biodiversity or environmental targets, and ensure they're locally adapted, practical and results focused. And we also feel that something that is key is an integrated local farm advisory system, which is farmer peer-to-peer training, technical and specialist support, and use of online technology. Then if we have a well-designed system, the implementation and control can be simpler, and also the use of technology can greatly improve efficiency. Next slide, please. Now, this is all part of a wider system. Now, we don't have the results-based systems working in isolation. They're working in conjunction with traditional management-based approaches. And we also have cross-cutting supports to raise awareness on this. And this is all part of shaping a new narrative around farming for nature in Ireland. We have our Farming for Nature network, and we also have national awards that started in 2008 for farmers. And from these, we have a range of ambassadors around the country promoting a Farming for Nature approach. Next slide, please. And also, we do a lot of work with colleagues like yourselves in the results-based payment network. We share experiences across Europe, and I think this is hugely important. Our thinking often evolves around farmers' tables. So this is the representatives from Ireland visiting the UK, sitting around a farmer's table in Dartmoor. And often we come back from this enthused about what's being done and ready to improve our systems for the future. Next slide, please. Now, finally, the last big question is, will results-based payments be a key component of Ireland's CAP strategic plan? Now, I would hope that we're going to seriously scale this up in an Irish context. That all the mood music is correct from the political system in terms of the European Green Deal, the Farm to Fork strategy, and our recently launched programme for government just at the weekend mentions support for results-based payment schemes. And we have a new minister in our Department of Agriculture with a portfolio on biodiversity and land use. So it's unbelievable the change that has happened in the political context in Ireland in the last 3 or 4 months. So I really hope at this stage that we will have an innovative network working in partnership to come up with locally adapted and results-oriented solutions across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, for this fantastic presentation. Just before I continue, the presentation and the discussion will be recorded. It is available also for other people. If you raise up your hands and want to speak and want to be not recorded, please just put it at the beginning of your statement and then be put off the recording. But on the other hand, it would be very useful to have your questions also for the others.
One thing I'd like to say, Wolfgang, as well, is that I think in the seminar today, we have many members of the Irish project teams. So if there's specific questions on the Hen Harrier program, Pearl Mussel or Burn program or other programs in Ireland, I should be able to refer the question to one of my colleagues as well.
Okay, great. So yeah, you have you reported about score system whole farm approach, which is not everywhere in Europe. Simple indicators and also very interesting results verifications. I want to ask the members if they have some questions, then go to participants, to click the blue hand, which we have already one. And then I would ask you either to have a clear question to James, or it's also possible a short statement, not a second lecture. Short statement means that you have also your experiences, want to share what you have heard from James, to add something. That's also possible. And we start with Tracy. You are the first. Please put on your microphone and then speak.
Yes, thank you very much.
Shortly, okay? Where are you from?
I'm from Finland and working or trying to get funding now. I'm planning to submit a proposal with some colleagues for a whole farm approach piloting that would focus on pollinators mainly. And okay. One of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm speaking with other people and introducing in Finland the concept of results-based. And since Finland doesn't really have any results-based, I think it's important to skip over these kind of really individual simplified schemes, which is what we've tried before without success, and go straight to the more sophisticated schemes that have been developed by others, such as in Ireland and in the UK, with having more whole farm approaches. So I'm really interested to do that. Something that I find a little bit challenging is that the question about what is results-based when you also have structural factors as part of it. So when you have a hybrid scheme that has structural factors, and then people keep asking me, well, but what's the difference then between an actions-based scheme if you have, if these are things that you just have to have and then you get a payment? So could you speak a little bit about how to incorporate that and speak with other people about that and put it into an application? Thank
you, Tracy. James?
Yes, well, in many of our scoring systems, the ecological integrity, so the plant indicators are front and center and take approximately 40 to 50%. But particularly for the example of pollinators, for example, it's hugely important that we have a diverse range of vegetation structure, and often maybe some herbaceous and scrub layers within the parcel itself for different pollinators, for both nest sites and foraging elements as well. So in terms of what we communicate as the result is both having the actual structural features that the actual pollinators need, and also the food plants. So I don't see a real conflict there. The one thing is on the damaging activities, we include these, and these ones will say, well, these are things that the farmer shouldn't be doing anyways, you know. But I think what's important there is that the farmers doesn't get any additional payment for these because they're weighted in that their top score is 0. But it really gives a clear communication tool to the farmer that if these unwanted activities are carried out, it mightn't impact the target species immediately, but in the long run it will. So they act as an early warning system. So I think the scoring system has a dual role of a communication tool on best practice as well as a results-based scoring system. So that's our justification for including, like what you say, these structural sort of what could be considered as action elements. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Trisha, you are the next. Put on your microphone, very short words to yourself, and then raise up question or comment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Trisha. Yeah, I'm in Southwest Ireland. I'm on a McGillicuddy Reeks. It's Ireland's highest mountain. So we have an EIP working here, very challenging terrain. I know Ireland's not known for its mountains, but believe it, they're big enough here. So question for James actually is just on the whole farm approach, James, in terms of Ireland and our unusual land ownership and things like that, the commonages. Do you think it is possible to get a whole farm approach across multiple commonages? Because what we're finding out, trying to get that cooperation between landowners, you know, when there are multiple landowners sharing one parcel of land, and then the different commonage can have a big impact. Do you think there's scope for that under the next round of these EIPs?
Yeah, I definitely think there is, and this is one of the challenges that we've had in an Irish context, in that we've had quite an amount of difficulty in trying to enhance the cooperation on common land in particular. And to date, we've failed to find solutions to this in our traditional agri-environment approach. But under our pilot, so there is a number of EIP operational groups, both yourselves and the REECs. We have the SUES project in Wicklow. We have a Connemara-based project. We have a project in Donegal and a project in the Blackstairs in the southeast of the country. And one of the things that they're combining with the actual results-based payment is commonage community partnerships. So one of the things they concentrate a lot on is getting farmers together on the commonages, getting them working together, often under an action-based approach, but working together towards a common result. So I very much think it is possible, but it is just about a matter of basically using the results-based payment system on the commonage to give clear signals and a clear vision and focus for the farmers on what they want to achieve, and then supporting them through a range of networking and community partnership structures to work together. So I think this is working, and particularly our Blackstairs, your old project in the REECs, and the Wicklow and Connemara and Donegal projects have done considerable amount of work in this in the last 2 years, with quite an amount of success, I would argue, as well, on putting together collective common land plans.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Tricia. Dick van den Berg, you are the next. Please put on your microphone. And I hope I spelled your name correctly, and tell us from where you are, and then raise up the question or the comment.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Dick van den Berg, so you pronounced correctly. We are Dutch, but we are together with my wife. We are living in Portugal. We have a small farm here. And meantime, I'm working in water and climate change projects internationally. My question is, we are currently involved in setting up an EU proposal for a next GEOS portal use of data for landscape restoration and ecological restoration. And I see a lot of opportunities to integrate this approach, the result-based payment approach, in the proposal. So I'm looking for contacts within the network, because we are new to the network, to do the proposal writing and to have an opportunity not only for the cases in Portugal and Spain, but also to Africa, because for us we have a connection to Africa, and I also see opportunities using this kind of approaches in development aid projects. So I'm looking for contacts within the network to work together.
Great. I mean, first of all, I want to answer, before James gives you an additional answer, you can also send us an email on the network, and we can be closer in contact and look which experts we find the network can best you help you. So that's an offer if you send us an email. James, do you have a direct answer, short answer?
Yes, I personally think there's huge potential in the results-based payments system and adapting it for a range of different targets, and particularly working with in terms of development aid as well, and linking aid to particular environmental targets as well, if that makes sense. Yeah. And of course, we're within the network, just to reiterate what Wolfgang says, it's one of the reasons we have this network is to be able to further develop and expand the approach into other areas.
And I think there are a lot of really great experts in the team, and they are all willing to help, just to let you know. Now, Jetze, Geene is great, because we need him anyway at telephone, and that's also now a test of the tone. Please put on your microphone if you have a microphone in the phone, and
yes,
raise up your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Wolfgang.
Yeah, that's great sound.
Oh, nice. Mooi, mooi. My name is Jetze Geene. I'm from the Netherlands, and you can also hear me right after Remco, just after this presentation. But I have still a question on the presentation of Ireland, of James. James, can you tell me the difference between the novel management and the AECM management? you
Okay,
had those words. Sorry, novel measures, and then the difference between them, the novel measures and the AECM measures. I saw that in one sheet.
Yeah, so this is the new measures that are being developed. So I think that the novel measures, it's often comes around about, in terms of their novelty, is how they're actually applied and linked to the results-based payment element. And also, traditionally in our agri-environment climate measures, there's a list of do's and don'ts. In these novel measures, we very much concentrate on describing the actual results that we want from the farmers, and the support mechanisms in terms of advisory, guidance, and working with the farmer to develop the solutions. This is the real novelty in it. So it's no real predefined action on any one individual parcel or farm before we go on to. We predefined results that we want on each area, and then we work together to actually come up with the actions. Now, that said, some of these actions might be quite akin to what the traditional ones would be, in terms of actually reducing nutrient loads in water, getting your nutrient management right, getting your grazing practices right, and also putting in supporting green infrastructure such as field boundaries and field margins. But it's how it's all combined with a specific result in mind is the important thing, if this makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
We're coming up. Yep. Do you have an additional question, or?
No, that's a good answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jetze. So we have a last question from Sven Devrin. Finland, Sweden, or Norway? I don't know. I can see.
Hello, I'm.
Or Belgium, I hear.
Yeah, Sven Devrin from Belgium.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the nice presentation. I have a question. When I talk to the policymakers about result-based payments, they are very interested in this, but they say funding is limited, and they are a bit afraid that it would be too costly, the system, because of all the monitoring that's involved and that would be needed extra. Did you investigate this kind of transaction costs related to this monitoring and compared to action-based payment schemes?
Yes, the BURN program, which is our longest running program now, has done quite an amount of work on investigating the transaction costs. And the transaction costs actually are quite cheap. They're 8% of the overall work, because once the system is set up and designed, it's quite efficient. In traditional management-based approaches, you often, in terms of verification, you have to verify that the action was done. You have to maybe get receipts and proof that the action was carried out into the appropriate guidance. So there's quite an amount of checking and monitoring involved in traditional action-based approach, and we can actually do it more efficiently in a results-based payment system, and the monitoring is inbuilt. So you have to have a separate monitoring program with the action-based approach, whereas it's all inbuilt in a good, well-designed results-based payment system. Is Brendan there? Brendan, you might want to comment on this, because Brendan, they've actually done the figures on the transaction costs and shown that it's more efficient and particularly more cost effective, because the effectiveness is through the roof compared to the action-based approach, and the costs are comparable or sometimes even lower. Brendan, are you there, Brendan?
I know that you're here because you are chatting also. I may ask you to answer this question of James and then summarize your chat, because there were also some interesting points. Shortly, please, because we are running out of time, but it is important. Brendan, please.
Yeah, I'm here, if you can hear me okay. So
yeah.
We've been running a hybrid payment system for about 10 years now, with maybe over 300 farmers. And what we found at this point is that the result-based payment is actually very low cost to administer compared to the action-based payment, maybe 3 times less. I'm not sure if my line is very good, Wolfgang, but I leave it at that and I'll add more into the comment box. Is that okay? Or can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
just one other point on it then. Why it's so cheap is because we just check about 25% of scores on an annual basis. So that's just one field worker for a few months every year checking the scores. The administration, the processing of it is very simple. Whereas by contrast, our actions are very expensive because we've got to help to plan them. We've got to help to make sure that all the receipts and paperwork are in place. We've got to make sure that the work is complete to satisfactory standard. We've got to make sure all the permissions are in place. So the action-based approach, when done properly, can actually be quite expensive, we find, as compared with the result-based approach. And finally, from the view of the ministry, what they do is a witnessed audit. So every year, the ministry will send 2 people down for 2 days, and they will do an audit of our team and how we carry out our work. And that is sufficient for the ministry to be satisfied with the result-based approach. So very positive in terms of not that complex, not that expensive.
great. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, James, for this presentation. Thank you, Ireland, for your system where we can learn a lot and implement something of your ideas in our systems. I hope it was useful for all participants. And we switch now to Netherlands, quite a different system. Remco, I think you will have a little introduction and then hand over to Jetze. And wanted to ask you if you are online and if you are ready for your presentation example from the Netherlands.
I am ready. Are you?
Yes.
So there it is.
Yeah.
So first I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to explain how we in the Netherlands have implemented our current AECM. So for the new CAP, it's most likely to be continued, and there is a strong demand of incorporating more result-based measures into the CAP, both in Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. So next slide. But for today, we will focus on our current AECM model, and it will be much less detailed than the presentation of James, but hopefully it's still interesting for all of you. So I will basically introduce the system itself and the basics of the payments. And Jetze, my colleague from the province of Friesland, will go into more detail on how the province deals with it. So that's more the practice side. So next one. In 2016, we transformed our AECM measures from a common system having contract with each participant to a system with just 42 contracts with cooperatives of Farmers for Nature. And as you can see on the map, these 42 cooperatives cover the whole country. And there's a small blank spot. You can see in the light green area. This is also managed by a collective, but these are their own hunting grounds. And they have their own regulations and all, so they're out of the system. When I say a cooperative of Farmers for Nature, I mean a legal body formed by farmers and sometimes with citizens dedicated to preserve the environment in the rural area. Some of these cooperatives have a long history and some are relatively young. And to get ready for 2016, in some regions, former small cooperatives merged to form a larger cooperative in order to be able to cope with the new task, like rent, professional staff, and running projects, and so on. So before starting in 2016, the cooperatives went through a certification process in order to get them ready on the administrative side. This is very important in relation to the hands-on management, and the system has a lot of flexibility, but for this, a sound administrative system is required. So next. So we move from individual contracts to an approach on landscape level, only applicable in designated areas. For each designated area, a management plan is made based on the needs of target species, looking at animals that they need a safe place to nest, they need enough feed, and they need a chance to survive, so also some shelter. Depending on the target species for each area, a mix of mostly management-based measures is planned, also taking the spatial distribution into account. This plan including the mix of measures and the expected area under contract, is input for the average payment per hectare to the cooperative. We will come back to this later. Based on this plan, the field coordinators from the cooperatives search for farmers who want to participate. Each year, the plan can be adjusted based on the experiences. Also, during the season, there's flexibility. The measures follow the species, follow the animals, and not the other way around, measures waiting for species to arrive. All, of course, within certain boundaries. So next one. Next, please. Yes. In our AESEM, we have 4 different habitats, our results, and one that is called water. For the habitats are open grasslands, which are mainly targeting waders. Open arable land for species like skylark, harriers, and partridge. Then we have 2 habitats which are more focusing on infrastructure. For the dry one, landscape elements like hedgerows, small ponds, and small fields supports bats, toads, but also birds. And the wet infrastructure, which is more typical for a delta like the Netherlands, they have banks of ditches, and they are supporting fish, frogs, and birds. As you might already have noticed, I'm not a specialist in fauna. The category water is used to support farmers in their activities related to the Water Framework Directive. And they have their own designated areas, which sometimes overlaps with the areas targeting biodiversity. Next, please. So how does this system look like? The cooperative has a contract of 6 years with the provincial government. This contract contains the number of hectares and the average payment per hectare based on the management plan. This is our front door. The cooperative has private contracts with the farmer, the back door. Most payments are following the standard based on the usual payment calculations, but in principle they have the flexibility to differ from it as these are private contracts. Like I said, there is some flexibility in the system. When a field coordinator thinks it's better for the birds not to cut the grass but to wait 1 week longer than it was agreed upon, this can result in a higher payment when the farmer agrees. But also when the chicks left the area already, so it's safe to mow, the coordinator can give permission to mow, and then the payment will be lowered. Of course, this is affecting the payment, but again, this is backdoor. We, speaking as a paying agency advisor, only deal with the front door. Next one. So how to get from a payment of each measure to an average price per hectare on landscape level? This is it's quite easy to make it complicated. Knowing that every area is unique and will have a unique mixture of measures, it would be impossible to work with a standard average price per hectare or habitat. However, with these management plans, we have a good base to work from, and as everybody was used to the payments of each measure, we decided to keep it simple. Price times quantity. So, with going back to the payment calculation based on income forgone, cost incurred, and transaction cost for each measure in the field and the number of hectares of each measure in a management plan, it's easy and transparent to calculate an average amount per hectare for each habitat in the contract. So that's it for now. From my side, I will now give the floor to Jetze, who will zoom in on how the province of Friesland is dealing with the cooperatives and the management plans.
Thank you very much, Remco, for this, let me say, introduction. Are you here, Jetze? Are you online? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I hope the sound is will become and will stay good. It's so and so. Please speak slowly.
Okay.
And you are.
Maybe this
the
is
floor
better.
is yours. Yeah, just
Thank you.
start. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Remco, for the nice introduction, and thank you for the whole community to have us here to speak some practical information about the province of Friesland, as Remco told you. My name is Jetze, Geene, and I'm working as a project leader for the AECM measures. In Dutch, we call it ANLB. It's our grant scheme for 6 years. This whole thing started in 2016, as Remco told. My experience in this role is not so old. I'm started in 2017 in this work, but it's also good to tell that it's not my profession, but my hobby more or less, and that's the meadow birds in this part of the province. I've been attracted to those birds all my life, so in some way I made a job of my hobby. That's good. In this role as a project leader for the AECM measures, I am the connection between the agricultural collectives, as Remco told you, and the government, in this case the province. We as a province, we are the government who is responsible for the measurements and the whole system of the AECM measures. This is the province. It's the most northern part of Friesland, of the Netherlands, I must say. It's a very arable and a province with not so much inhabitants. We have only 650,000 inhabitants of 17 million in the whole of Netherlands. So there's a lot of space for farms. And as you can see in the table I've put in the presentation, it's mostly represented by the grazing livestock farms. And that's the dairy farms in our place. So a lot of farming, a lot of acres filled in by farmers. So there's a high objective to be dealing with the AECM measures. The number of farms is declining, and it's still going. I think in 2020, as we speak, we have only 4,200 farms, I think. So that's something which is still going on, and that's also a nice challenge to burden. Next sheet, please. Oh, yes, thank you. We as a province, we have our own policy due to the agricultural policy, and we call that nature inclusive farming. It's a long road to get there, but we tried to start it in 2014 already, and that's because of the agricultural policy was motivated by a lot of problems: overproduction, environmental issues, health, etc. It still is, I think, as you read the papers nowadays. But we try to shift the focus, and we try to create opportunities. As I said before, the agricultural sector is very important for our province. So we try to shift it in a way that it earns a good living for the farmer, and also we try to bend it over to a way of farming where there is less pressure on the environmental issues and other legislation from Europe or from our Dutch government. How do we achieve that? We try to look at a new generation of farmers. A generation produces more for the regional, national, international markets based on knowledge and insights. So less leaning on the government and finding more opportunities in the region, all contributing to the search of a less intensive way to produce products and still earn a good living. We call it nature inclusive farming. We see farmers who are practicing this type of farming, and they're especially loaned by less costs because they use the environment, they use the nature on their farm. Think, for example, on the soils of the farms. Next sheet, please. So, why and what is nature inclusive farming? We try to put out the negative effects and try to let the positive effects grow. And as I said before, it's mostly a reduction of costs, which can be realized by this way of farming. And the word of biodiversity is very central in this. It's the functional biodiversity, of diversity. Think about soil and bees, landscape diversity, hedgerows, typical landscapes in this part of Netherlands. Species diversity, you can see the lapwing below this text. It's one of the species which is very good represented in this part of the Netherlands. So the meadowbirds is, for example, very important for us. And the biocultural diversity, as we had the cultural capital of Europe in 2018 in our capital Leeuwarden. It was a very nice year with a lot of cultural expansion. Next sheet, please. So to take you with me in the landscape diversity, I will show you the decline of the agricultural landscapes. It's in Holland, for example, and Friesland in particular, very much on the way. And you can see 3 parts of landscape in this sheet. It's on the left, the more nature park landscape, mostly managed by a professional organization. And then we have the mix of nature inclusive. You can see the farm of the parcels with a lot of flowers and high water levels. And we have the high productive fields with the ryegrass, for example. Next sheet. This is all what the problem is. The percentage of the nature inclusive, the herb-rich fields, and the high water level, mostly the best living for the meadowbirds, for example, is declining, and that's due to the intensification of the farmers who have to grow and grow and grow. So we see a lot of ryegrass and less herb-rich grass. Next sheet, please. Then to take you with the role of the province in this AECM measures, we focus on the designated areas. You can see the map of our province. You can see a lot of colors, a lot of boundaries, but you can also see white fields, and the white fields are the areas where it isn't possible to get any grant from any scheme. So only the designated areas, and Remco has told you before, we call it habitats. It's the open grassland and the open arable fields. For the most one, there's the green and the dry infrastructure on the east part of the province. It's mostly sand ground with a lot of landscapes elements as hedgerows, etc. And we have the wet part in the middle. It's the blue color. And the designated areas, those are the areas where the collective can apply the measurements. They cannot apply the measurements in the white areas. So not the whole of the province is able to go along with the AECM measures. You can see in the little card in the left above corner. I've tried to, it's not so visible, yeah, that one. Those red spots are the density of the black-tailed godwit in our province. And this is a research card for the bird investigators, and it shows the the high density of the meadow birds. So we try to project the meadow bird habitat just at that place. So we work with designated areas. Next sheet, please. You can see the black-tailed godwit, and you can see those specific birds species come along with the designated areas and with the habitats we want to go for. So we want to go for the western yellow wagtail on the northern part, and that's the arable fields, the black-tailed godwit, for example, or the lapwing on the open grassland. The yellow hammer, it's a typical bird for the dry infrastructure. And you can see a pike and a weatherfish for the wet infrastructure. So those species we call the goal species for the measurements. Next sheet, please. So the goal species are our total goals. We collect them. We try to get them in an area plan. For the province, it's the nature preserve plan. It's an annual plan which can be changed any year. The area plan is made by the collectives, and the area plan is drawn up to the collective together with some scientific ecologists or landscape experts. So it's a combination of the farmers itself and a team of ecologists and landscape experts. They made the best plan for the region where they try to apply the measurements. Those measurements have to provide for the conditions of the grant scheme secured in the nature management plan. That's our provincial plan, and in that plan we have our written down our goals, and we've written down the designated areas where they can be using the grant scheme. All of the Frisian, that's our province, 7 collectives we have in Friesland. They had to submit an area plan. The basic targets per designated area, they can be quite big to very big. You've seen those designated areas in the sheet before. The sub areas, as the picture shows you on the right side, it's a smaller area. It's about 50 to 500 acres. And that's a sub area where the collective is choosing the right measures to get the specific species they want to deliver by doing these measures. So they're creating a micro habitat for those specific birds or those specific species in flowers or in amphibies. So the deployment of management packages, the type of each measure and the target species, they must all be written down in the area plan. The role of the province, we as a province, together with a team of specialists, we assess the application in the area plan. So we check the area plan and we give it back if it's not good enough, or we apply to it, and then we take it up in a nature management plan. For example, for an extension of the designated areas, if that may be necessary. Next sheet, please. Another one, management of the measurements. How do you do that? The role of the collective, the use of the area coordinator and the management director are being used for the farm management. You can see on the picture on the right side, it's a plan on micro level, approximately 200 acres with 6 or 7 farms, which all do some kind of AECM measurements. The area coordinator and the management director of the collective, they have to gain the farmers. So they They try to they try to make the farmers enthusiastic to join, and they try to apply the measurements in a way that it's being a total, and it's not being scattered around this whole area. What's the role of the province? I, as a coordinator of this job, I have a periodically contact with the collectives, and in a way I do that with the coordinators, or I do it with the chairman, and that's just because of the type of management is needed at that moment. We call that this process learning by doing, or learning management. Try to improve all the way during the years of management. So we started in 2016 for a lot of collectives, and also for us as a government. Is quite new application. It was a new experience, so everyone has to be to learn from it. And we try to do that by the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. The province of Friesland facilitates the collectives through the investment subsidies at a habitat level. That's an additional investment subsidy or grant scheme that we provide to improve the management for the collectives. Next sheet, please. This is an interesting, the control and the sanction policy. That's quite difficult. Control by the province. The management tool is the progress report. This report provides for monitoring, ecological, for example, management and assessment of sanctions and management adjustments. It's an annual meeting. In this annual meeting, we shall be held at the end of the year. We try to put things together for the evaluation of that year, and the progress report is discussed, and then any points of attention are recorded. The control of the management. All management is registered in the ICT program. It's for it's in the Dutch called the SCAN ICT, SCAN, and it stands for the direct link between the collectives and the paying agency. It's being checked on the plot registration by the Ministry of Agriculture. That's where my colleague Remco is working. And the RVO is the paying agency which pays out the amounts on behalf of the province. Errors and field checks are processed into an annual distribution of the management. Next sheet, please. We have also an audit committee by the collectives. That's a very important thing of this whole grant scheme. It's the back door, as Remco told you. Within the collectives, control committees have been set up. Each collective has a control and assessment protocol. Farmers check colleagues for the implementation and compliance with the package conditions. This committee also provides coaching and training of the members. So that's very important, that this same committee who is doing the audit is also coaching and training the members. Management report for each habitat. We ask for a series table, as you see on the lower side of the sheet, which in this table we can see a change of management over the years. In addition, we ask for an overview of control measures and possible sanctions which the collective has applied to its members. Next sheet. You can see a card here of the measurements, and also with the bullets of the species which are breeding in those measurements. So to wrap up, we can go to the conclusions. I think the customization with the sector is very important. The management in the region is very important. So that's the coordinators of the collectives, mostly the most important people in this whole grant scheme. The farmers, the entrepreneurship of the farmers, the knowledge, the education, and the experience. That's all what's gathering around this grant scheme, and the cooperation with the farmers. Extra, I can tell you that the position of the collectives becomes more and more central point of contact for issues from the market, the landscape, or the governments. A broadening of tasks that fits perfectly with the focus of broadening the CAP, the CEP targets. Most collectives must be aware on the percentage of the overhead costs. New and external advisory services will have to be charged separately from the ANLB or the AECM measures. Otherwise, the collectives will run into liquidity problems. Management funds from the ANLB or AECM measures are paid only 1 year after execution. So that's a thing that collectives are rubbling with. So that's my story, and I'm surprised if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Jetze, and also Remco for your quite impressive presentation. One of the less countries which use collectives in the result-based system, and also this approach learning management, very interesting and maybe typical for result-based schemes. Also, we heard that a bit in Ireland. Learning by doing, I think this is a great possibility in the system of result-based schemes to learn on actions and results. So I have the questions. If you have questions, again, please go on the blue hand and give us a sign that you want to raise up a question, or even if you want to comment something, or if you didn't understand something, then please do just the same. So the floor is yours. Is there anybody who has something, want something to ask? Hello? Yes, there is DJ Agri. Hello. Sally Pepiette, please put on your microphone and maybe a short words to you, even it's clear that you are from DG Agri.
Hello, yes, I'm Sally. I work in the Commission in DG Agri, and I'm a policy advisor there. And I have worked a lot on agri-environment schemes over the years. I'd like to thank the participants for these really interesting and inspiring presentations. And I have a question, because the example that we've just seen from the Netherlands is sort of principally focused on biodiversity. And I'd like to ask the presenters whether they see scope, or really what scope they see for using results-based payment schemes to, for example, reduce carbon dioxide emissions from land. Something that's less visible than being able to actually go and see habitats, but which is a really pressing issue. And I would be really interested to know how they might envisage results-based payments being used for that sort of environmental objective. Thank you.
Okay, very clear question. Difficult maybe. Remco or Jetze, who want to answer, and also the others. I think there are in the Balkans are also some experiences with that, but we start with Remco or Jetze. You just jump in.
Shall I try?
Yes, please.
The first answer. for carbon, but also well, think about soil or other hard to measure objectives or results. We are now working for the new CMP, especially for the first pillar, to get some kind of result-based system to reward sustainable farming. So not just look at climate or soil, but we want to look at the farm as a whole. So look at the farm result. So it's a small habitat to us, but it's addressing more topics in that case.
Okay, thank you very much. Jetze, do you want to add something?
Yeah, something in addition of the specific question of the CO2 reduction. We in the province of Friesland have a great area of peat meadow, and peat meadow is having a lot of problems. Also the CO2 reduction, and we're looking forward to the new grant scheme, the CAP, to adjust maybe those pillar 1 or pillar 2 measures to reduce the CO2 reduction in the peat meadows, specific in the middle of the Frisian part of the peat meadows. So yeah, we see a not only biodiversity or species, but also climate and soil or yeah, water. Water is also very important, the water quality.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who want to answer this question, maybe from Estonia? Some comment to that, because I think you have similar challenge. Is there somebody from Estonia still here? Let's see. Eneliwik, are you here? James, can you say something to that?
Yes, just to comment on the Irish perspective on this. Well, I have a number of research students myself that are looking at carbon content in soils and the relationship with the scorecards, and early results at the moment are quite promising on that. But particular, I might bring Derek McLaughlin in here from the Pearl Mussel project. They're working in particular with an Interreg Carbon Connects project that's specifically looking at this topic, and in particular the peatlands of the west of Ireland in terms of their potential for carbon sequestration is hugely important in terms of overall land use in an Irish context. So maybe Derek, do you want to just explain what's going on with the Carbon Connects project on the Pearl Mussel areas?
Hear me okay, because the internet coverage isn't the best here in this part of the west of Ireland. I'm Derek McLaughlin. I'm with the Pearl Mussel Project EIP, and pearl mussels are our primary aim and target and so on. But one thing that James mentioned in his talk is that it's extremely important to design broad schemes that look at all of the greater services, the greater biodiversity, water quality, and of course carbon, which is very much on all of our plates at the moment. So we've teamed up and collaborating with an Interreg project called Carbon Connects. There may be some attendees here with us at the workshop, but there we're looking at our scorecards and the ability of our scorecards to detect the quality in terms of carbon sequestration and storage. So we pay farmers, it's a results-based payment, scored out of 10, similar to other schemes like the Pearl Mussel, like the Hen Harrier and the Burren, but we're looking at the relationship of carbon sequestration or carbon storage in terms of its scores out of 10. The higher the score, the higher the payment, but that's how we're relating it to carbon, so that we know that the farmer that produces the best water quality is getting the highest payment for that, but is also doing the most in terms of carbon.
Okay, thank you very much. Brendan Danforth, there's a question or comment?
Yes, no, I have a question for our Dutch colleagues. I was interested in what you had to say about farmers or the association or the management team of farmers checking other farmers. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on how this works? Does the system work well? Is it well received by other farmers? I'd be interested to know more. Thank you.
Remco or Jetze, I never know. Jetze, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's the self-control by farmers. Those farmers have a control system which is practiced by farmers, of course, but the one farmer is not checking his neighbor. That's very important. It's a small world, and it's in every country the same, I think. But what we do, or what they do, the collectives, with their commission, they travel approximately 20 kilometers away to come in for them a new world, for them a new farmers, and they check on on the measurements, of course. That's one. The other thing is that it's not we call it sanction, or we call it checking with the warm hand. It's a lot of drinking coffee on the table with the farmers and explain what's going on, why it's not good, and if they're repeating in the mistakes or in the wrong measurements, they will get a sanction. And in the first years, it was very much the warm hand, and now it's more or less you do it well or you don't, and then you get a sanction. The sanction is being the withdrawal of the management fee for the measurement, but also an additional sanction can be provided. It departs on the mistake, and it departs on the collective.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask Isabel, you had a comment on the chat, which is quite interesting, on indicators of soil health. Can you explain that for us shortly? Then please put on your microphone. Short words to you. Are you here?
Yes, yes,
Great.
I'm here. I'm from the University of Évora in Portugal, and we've been developing a result-based scheme for the Montado. Actually, we are still on the phase of developing and testing indicators. And regarding soil, because some people were mentioning soil and carbon sequestration, really we are not measuring carbon sequestration or no direct measurement, but we are evaluating soil health and functionality, let's say, through the vegetation cover within the Montado. Due to the particularities of the Montado, the characteristics of soils under the canopies and out of the canopies of the trees, because it's an agroforestry system, are different. And one of the major indicators really is the difference of vegetation underneath and out of the canopies of the trees. And that's one of the indicators that we are developing for this, because really the soil for us in the Montado is one of the very limiting factors it's probably the major limiting factor for the whole functioning of the system as a producer of ecosystem services. So that's the thing mainly.
Great, thank you very much. And I wanted to ask you, Theresia Eichhorn, because you had also a very interesting comment on the chat. You have a consoler project where you have similar approaches, maybe short words, just that we have the link and that we are informed. Are you here? Can you explain us that shortly?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Thanks.
We have in Console an inventory made with case studies, and we have there 2 case studies which deals with carbon sequestration. One is from Austria and one is from Finland. One measures the humus content and therefore sells then certificates. And this is also to make the soil quality better and also make the carbon sequestration. And one is from Finland, and they restore peatlands and also sell therefore carbon certificates. And the one from Austria is really result-based because they directly measure the increase of humus content in the soil, and the farmers that then were stored CO2 ton an additional amount of money, so 30 years or something. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. I just wanted to inform you that all the chats are will also be minuted by Johanna, because there are interesting links there, and so that you didn't miss anything. Great, Remco and Jetze, thank you very much for this presentation. If there are no new questions, I just look, but there are no blue hands. Thank you for this view in your system, a very interesting system. We also try to, in Austria, to make something with collectives, with communities, and we have a look on your country. We are definitely at the end of our webinar, of our first webinar, but I have questions to everybody of the participants, which might be interesting, also because we discussed it with the European Commission a few days ago. I wanted to ask everybody if there is in one country the plan, then please just give us the blue hand, because then I give the word, to implement the result-based payment also or only in the eco schemes. That would be a quite interesting short comment. If it is the case, maybe we plan a second webinar just to this topic, how to implement result-based payments in the eco schemes. So the question is, does anybody plan that? Is there a comment to that, even from European Commission, maybe? So I look, there was one blue hand, but this blue hand disappeared. No, Carolina, is it? Aha, Remco, Carolina, Robin. Okay, there are some blue hands. Okay, more. We start with shortly with Carolina. It's not necessary to give us everything. Maybe just to have a taste if it is worth to make a second webinar to this topic. Carolina, I give you the word. Heliconia from the Spain, I think. Put on your microphone and then we hear you.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Carolina from Madrid. We are working in an European project, Contracts 2.0. And also I am the director of an agrarian park in Madrid. And we are very interested in attending to another webinar, because right now in Spain, the agro schemes haven't begun to function, but in the next years, we suppose they are going to start, and we are working with the National Agrarian Council and also with the agrarian program in Madrid, and we advise them how to put new agri-environmental measures. So for us, it's an opportunity to attend to this webinar, and also we are very happy and very glad to attend to this meeting, and we hope we can do more networking.
Great, but you don't have the plan to implement it in the eco scheme directly. I ask Remco, do you have a comment to that?
I pushed the wrong button. Well, I want to say, just like I said earlier, in our design of the eco schemes for the coming CAP, we're working on some kind of scorecard system for sustainable, for assessing the sustainability of a farm. And so looking at the D, E, and F objectives, goals of the National Strategic Plan objectives. So climate, soil, air, water, biodiversity, and landscape should be addressed by the measures the farmer takes, and he gets points by those measures, and he has to get a certain, well, reach a certain threshold, like the Irish system has.
Okay.
But we're still working on it, of course, and the decision still has to be made. It's all about politics.
Yeah.
That's what I learned also from Ireland. So, but our task at the moment is working on the National Strategic Plan. It's one of the main directions we are working on.
Great, thank you very much. Dick van den Berg. I hope I spelled it well. Dick van den Berg.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks for this, again, very interesting presentations and discussion. Just a remark, we were triggered by the comment of the European Union representative for measuring CO2 and greenhouse gases. So there's a very strong link to this EU Next Geos platform, which is already existing for using remote sensing data and satellite sensors to do monitoring. And that's exactly what we are working on, is to connect this kind of result-based payment schedules to a direct monitoring system. But in fact, these sensors are already in place and operational, so we can do a direct measurement of greenhouse gas impacts and CO2 on the ground and related to landscape management. So that's just a remark. I think it's interesting to use it for the validation and the indicator discussion.
Super, great. So I want to thank everybody for participating. We are finalizing this webinar. Very big thank you to you, James, for give us this lecture of Ireland. Thank you to Remco and Jetze to give us the impressions and lecture to Netherlands. Thank you for all your questions you raised up and comments. I just wanted to ask you if for a photo which wonderful Johanna will quasi copy, that you put on your camera for that we see you at least. Great, Maria, yeah, James, Isabel, Teresa, Gerald, yes. We have 4 slides, so please wait a moment. Wahnsinn. In Vienna, we would say, das ist Levant. Great. So put on your camera. We just have to switch now to page 1, 2, 3, 4. We do our best. Johanna is switching on the first page. They are coming more and more. Now something happened. Maybe our, do you hear us still?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Then we. I think this is. Karin, you shared you are the one. You shared your desktop. Karin, do it. Yeah. Maybe you can end this screen sharing. Yeah. Super. We are great. I mean, we are not stupid. So we are still make photographs. So you can also scroll to second page. There's everybody here. Hey. One last is missing. Then I have a message for you. Great. First of all, at the finals, I want to thank also Sven de Vrien from Belgium, because he had the idea for this first webinar. So thank you to you. I hope it was good for you. You learned something, because yes, you did. And your daughter or your son is with you. Your daughter. Yes. Today you never know with its long hair, you know, is it? No details. And my second question, and that's the last time I ask you for your blue hand, is maybe to follow up with a webinar how to implement result-based schemes in the rural development system. Maybe also in Pillar 1, that depends in eco scheme, but firstly in rural development. I mean, the topics for the webinars are complete free. You can send us an email or an idea on our website, but this is just a question. If you think that the question how to implement result-based schemes on rural development program, if you're interested in this webinar, just give a blue hand to us that we know what it looks like.
How?
Okay. Yeah, you go how? Okay, somebody's you go to participants.
Yes.
And click, and then on the right side, yeah, there are the participants. On the bottom, you see a blue hand, and you just click it. But we have so many blue hands that you can also tell us personally. Yeah, give us the hand.
Yes, a red hand, a pink hand.
Great. We also take red and pink hand. So Johanna will bring us the last slide with the context and the account of the website. I say thank you to all of you. I wish you a nice summertime. Hope much sun and less corona. And if you have any questions to our network, so just come to the website, be a member of the network, and yeah, and we see it. Yeah, take part on it. Great, now we have it. Ciao, ciao. Nice summer. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
Bye. Thank you very much.